Okay guys, what we're going to do here is an oil and filter change, engine oil and filter. The engine has about 293 hours on it. I picked this up, it had 263 hours. So they weren't sure when the oil was changed. I figured at 200 hours they probably did service on it. So I'm just going to do it 7 hours short. So instead of 300 hours, I'm going to do it at 293. It's really not a big deal. So what we have are 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I believe there's 7. There could be another one hidden somewhere, but we'll take them out and we'll see how the cowling comes off by removing those. And we're going to use a 5mm Allen wrench. Okay, so what we had here was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There was one up there. 6, 7, 8. 8 Allen head screws of different sizes, so you want to make sure you put them in the right spot when you put them back. And then there was 2 Phillips driver head screws, 1, 2 up in the top. There's always a hidden screw somewhere, so make sure you get those 2 so you don't break the cowling. This piece of cowling would probably cost you $500 to replace this, so you don't want to break it. And here's your drain plug. They give you a little piece of rubber so you don't get it all over the place, and that's your drain plug there. So we'll get that out, we'll get the oil, we'll get a container, we'll get the oil out, and we'll clean this up a bit in here, spray it down with some lube. And here's the filter. We'll get a wrench and we'll get the filter off. Okay, so you need a 14mm. I used an extension, so I cleared the housing to get that loose. It was pretty tight. And I got a 5-gallon bucket here. You want, there's like 7 quarts, so you want a bucket big enough to hold the amount of oil that's coming out of here. It's a little on the dark side, so it was due. Changing it up 7 hours ahead of time isn't going to hurt me any. At least I know this engine is running real good. At least I know I have fresh oil in it. So I'll let that drain out real good. Now, some people use an extractor. They put an extractor down the dipstick and they pull it out from there. But doing it this way, you know you're going to get all the oil out of it and any settlement in the bottom of the pan. Now I used a clean bucket, and I'll leave it in the bucket for a couple of days before I take it to the recycling center. And then as I pour it in the recycling center, I'll look in the bottom of the bucket to make sure there's no signs of metal, any kind of metal flaking or material that's settled out. And that'll be it. Now we'll get a filter wrench. We'll leave this drain to get it drained out real good, and I'll get a filter wrench and we'll pull that filter off. Okay guys, I just remembered, because I bought all this stuff ahead of time and I never ended up getting the filter. But you want a filter to fit the back of this, I mean a wrench, excuse me, wrench, to fit the back of this filter. I bought the filter, the new filter, but I didn't get the wrench. So if you're careful, you could use a big pair of channel lock, But I would, if I was you, I would get a filter wrench, because if you squeeze this or get it stuck on there, you're gonna have problems. And luckily this one isn't fighting me that much to get it off, but some of them could be really stuck on there. So that's coming off. And by draining the oil first, you kind of drain your filter too, so there shouldn't be much of a mess up here. They do have a little scoop down here to catch anything that might come out of the filter. Okay, there wasn't much there. Now, with these filters, and you want to be very careful on this. I checked and checked and checked for this engine. This number here, N2613440-02, is the exact same number that's on this filter. Now, these filters are sold on eBay, Amazon. Everybody sells these filters, and they sell them cheap, but the numbers are different. So, God forbid you have an engine problem, but if you do, and you don't have the right filter on the engine, they're not going to warranty it. So make sure you have this number, and this number is recommended for this engine. This is a 250 horsepower Yamaha engine, and this is the exact filter that's recommended for it. So be careful there. Now I got 2 gallons of 4M. It's 10W30 weight, FC-W 10W30 Yamalube. Now this is made specifically for this engine. This is non-synthetic, it's conventional oil. Eventually I'll probably switch it over to full synthetic, but right now I have this stuff to use. I got 2 gallons, which is more than enough, and I'll check the specs on it to find out exactly the amount that's supposed to be in here. So what you want to do is your new filter, you want to get a little oil out of here, and then go around the O-ring with the oil, and then put a little bit in the threads. I don't know why that's so low. It's supposed to be a gallon. Put some on the threads. Make sure the O-ring is coated good. And I cleaned all this up in here. The surface is all clean. It's like brand new. So then you put your filter in there. Get it started on the threads. You don't want to cross thread it or anything. You want it to go on straight and easy. And you'll go till it bottoms. And then I'll give it a quarter of a turn. From where it bottoms, quarter of a turn. And we got the oil still dripping, so we'll give that some more time. And I'm going to go in and check the book on the exact amount of quarts that go into this. Okay, there's actually a label right on the engine. With the filter, it takes 6.7 US quarts. So I got 2 1 gallon containers, so I'll put a full one in, and then 3/4 of the other one, and then I'll check the dipstick. But you do not want to overfill these engines with oil. That's the worst thing you could do with an outboard, is to overfill it. So we're going to put exactly what they say, 6.7 US quarts. Okay, so we're about done draining here. I'll just go in with some paper towel and clean this up a little bit in there. I checked it with a flashlight, it looks good. Now here's your drain plug. There's a metal washer on here, aluminum washer. It looks good. If you buy the kit, it'll come with a new one, so you could replace it, but I'm going to reuse it. So you just put that back in there. I put a little grease on that. A little grease so it doesn't bind when I tighten it up. So I don't know if there's a torque. I'm just gonna tighten it till it feels pretty good. But you might want to check for torque specs on the plug. You know, I'm a millwright, a mechanical millwright by trade. So mechanical stuff is like, I know it like the back of my hand. So that's tight in there. The filter's on. I put down the hours, 293 hours. That's when we put the new filter. And your plug is up top here. That's your fill plug. And get yourself a funnel. This is an old galvanized funnel, but it's very clean. I cleaned it out. You might want to use plastic or something that's really spotless. Okay, and then this is the first gallon that we're going to go in with. Just take my time so it goes in. Without overflowing everything. Make sure it goes down. I pulled the dipstick out on the other side. I'll show you that here in a minute. I pulled the dipstick up out of there. That'll act as a vent. So when you're putting the oil in, this is a vent so you don't overflow the fill. Okay, let me get the second container and I'll see exactly what I need. Okay, so we put one full container, which is a gallon or 4 quarts. So when they say a gallon, I was looking at the mark, it looks like it was more than a gallon. So I measured out here, because it shows you on this side, I measured out 2 quarts here. So let's say we have 4 and 2 would be 6 quarts. And it's calling for 6.7. So we'll start off with 6, because like I said, you don't want to overfill these things with oil. We'll put this one in. So we know we have 6 quarts, give or take an ounce here or there. So we'll let that drain out and we'll check the stick, the dipstick. And that should give us enough to get the engine started. And we might have to add a little bit depending on what the stick is showing. I'll show you here. You got your 2 marks here. That's your high, that's your low. So you want to be right in the middle. So we'll let that drain. We'll see where we are on the marks. And then I could always add, I'll add a little bit from the other container until I'm right dead smack in the middle. And then your filter might take a little oil. So we'll run the engine and then we'll recheck it. And then that should do it. So while you got your cowling off, like I said, I'm going to clean all this up with soapy water and let it dry. And I have Yamaha silicone spray. I'm going to spray it all down with silicone. I see there's a little corrosion here on these big bolts. And this nut on the end. I'm going to clean all this off Then I'll probably get some primer spray it with some primer. You know, it'll help protect it a little bit. So this is the stuff you want to look for, you know, when you have this apart. Now the gear case, I'll probably pull the plug out and check it. I already changed the gear oil when I got the boat, so that has another 70 hours to go on it, and then we'll do that. But it's a good idea to do them both at the same time. They're both 100-hour schedule, so it's a good idea to do them both at the same time. This way you get them out of the way. Okay, we'll check the level here in a minute. Okay, so we'll pull the stick out, give it a wipe, and we'll put it back in. And we're a little bit low on halfway. And don't forget, we don't have no oil in the filter yet. So I'm going to give it maybe 2 ounces more. About 2 ounces more. And then we'll check it after I run it. We'll check it again. Okay, so we'll do a final check. I put about 2 or 3 ounces in there. Pull your stick out, wipe it, put it back in, and we're a little bit above half, which I'm not going to complain about because we're going to start the engine later. We're going to get oil in the filter, and then we'll recheck it. Okay, so to wrap this up, I cleaned all this off under here, hosed it all off with fresh water, let it dry. I wire brushed and painted. The nut is stainless, but the bolt is steel. I don't know why they would put a steel bolt. I guess when it rusts away, you got to put a new one. It's probably $50 for that bolt. So I cleaned it up and painted it, and then I sprayed all this with silicone spray. I use Yamaha silicone protective. I spray everything with this, wires, metal parts, everything. It's really, really good product. So this is all sprayed down, and I'll probably put a little grease on the bolts when I put them back. They had some kind of a thread lock sealant on there. I'll probably put a little grease on there, and we'll bolt this back up. Okay, we got our cowling bolted back up here. I started the top screws first, left them loose, and then went around, put all the other screws in, get them all started, and then go around and tighten everything. I put a little grease on the threads, and we'll check the oil one more time. And everything settled down now. So we're a little bit up past the halfway, but we haven't run this yet. So once we run it, we're going to get some oil in the filters, and oil's going to be circulating around the engine. So that might drop just a little bit, but that's enough to get me going. So we'll run the engine on our next trip, and then we'll bring it home, and then we'll check the oil level, and it should be right on the money. Okay, so that's how you do an oil change on a V6. This is a 250 horsepower Yamaha V6 engine, 2017, with 293 hours. So that's how you do the oil change properly. Okay, thanks for watching.